All right, welcome to Critical Weight Theory. And this is a review that I've really had on the back burner for some strange reason for a while now. And, it's got a lot of charm to it. It's one of those albums. In 2003, the Mars Volta released De-Loused in the Comatorium, an album that didn't just enter the world of rock music, it sort of detonated inside of it. It's a chaotic, beautiful, sometimes terrifying journey through addiction, hallucination, and rebirth. It's part funk, part jazz, part cosmic meltdown. It was no ordinary debut. It was the birth of the Volta, and De-Loused in the Comatorium was the first full length album from the Mars Volta, the brainchild of Cedric Bixler Zavala and Omar Rodriguez Lopez, two musicians who broke away from their post hardcore band at the drive in. They weren't interested in playing it safe. They wanted to burn the rule book, and this album pretty much does that. Their sound was progressive rock, experimental jazz, Latin grooves, plenty of punk energy, all colliding at once. It's like science fiction for your ears. That's how the album opens. It's a quiet descent into madness, followed by a sudden explosion. Your first step into the coma dream that is the album. And behind that sound, you had Rick Rubin producing, Flea from the Red Hot Chili Peppers on bass, and the band pushing every note to the edge of collapse. So the concept is it's a little bit freaky and a little bit out there. It has to do with life, death, and a character named Serpent Taxed. This isn't just a collection of songs, it's really a story. The album's concept is based on the life and death of Julio Venegas, a friend of Cedric and Omar from their hometown of El Paso. Venegas was a gifted artist who struggled with addiction and mental health and ultimately took his own life. In De-Loused, he becomes the character Serpent Taxed, a fictional stand in who overdoses on morphine and rat poison, slips into a coma, experiences surreal hallucinations, and eventually ends his own life after waking up, or something like that. That's the official narrative that I've heard about anyway regarding the album. Of course, the album would mean different things for different people because it is a little on the abstract side, but it's got plenty of distorted guitars and plenty of odd sounds happening throughout the entire album, which makes it a little bit dreamlike. It could also be polarizing. I'm going to be honest about that. There's no guarantee that you will like this album. There are also some really emotional sounding vocals that aren't really, they're not exactly hardcore vocals. They might be construed as emo vocals in some ways. But there's also a little bit of a classic rock vibe happening as well. It's really hard to pin down exactly what you would call this album. So you could just call it, the album name or the Mars Volta. It's a brutal premise, that story for the album, and it's handled with surreal poetry. The lyrics are cryptic, fragments of dreams, nightmares, and strange symbolic language. You never get a clear map of Serpent's journey, you feel it instead. The sound is controlled chaos. Musically, De-Loused is indeed organized, yet it sounds chaotic at the same time. And interestingly, the band does pretty much pull all of the stuff off live, although, of course, they do have some changes if you've ever seen live versions of these songs. I've checked them out on YouTube, and it's one of those things where you might like them better live, you might prefer what's on the album. It's really a matter of taste. The Mars Volta fuse Latin rhythms, odd time signatures, and walls of guitar effects that shift from delicate to explosive in seconds. And there's one track called Roulette Dares, the haunt of in parentheses. The words the haunt of is in parentheses. And that shows their dynamic power. I recommend that one. Moving from manic bursts to melodic calm, never staying quite still. Then there's Drunk Ship of Lanterns, which has Afro Caribbean percussion com- combining or colliding with a storm of guitars, and Cicatrice ESP, 11 minutes of sonic escalation, including an extended jam that sounds like a space ritual gone wrong. And there are moments that kind of remind me of Santana a little bit too. So that might be where some of the classic rock vibe comes from. I don't actually know if they were fans of Santana. It's possible that they were, and that this album was influenced by them. I'm not really sure. And amid the chaos, another track called Televator stands out too. It's sort of like the emotional heart of the record, at least in my opinion. It's stripped down, haunting, almost like a eulogy or something like that. And with an album like this, it's either going to be a total flop or it's going to have a significant legacy. And this one really does have a profound impact on listeners. It's one of those albums where even if you don't like it, you probably will remember that you listened to it. And that's usually a sign that an album's actually either really good or really bad, of course. But even an album that you think is really bad, you're still going to remember it, right? Most of the time, anyway. And that's one of the aspects of this, I guess, this genre, if you want to call it a genre. It's going to be polarizing. There are people who will be drawn into it, and others will be repelled by it. When De-Loused in the Comatorium was released in 2003, critics didn't quite know what to make of it. They didn't know what to do with it. It was too wild for radio, too complex for punk, too emotional for prog, or at least most prog. And yet it still blew people away, and it definitely created a fan base. Now, I don't know if it created any new genres or subgenres or anything like that. But again, this is a band that is almost like their own genre. That's when you have something that's really significant, when you don't feel that much of a need to compare and contrast it to other groups or other musical concepts. It's just kind of what it is. That's one of the nice things about this album. It's it's just something you experience. And reviewers called it ambitious, fearless, and unlike anything else in the early 2000s rock scene. While everyone else was leaning into post grunge and emo when it comes to rock, the Mars Volta were building cathedrals of sound, though, of course, like I said, it does have some emo elements to the vocals. I'm sure some people might say, "What are you talking about?" But I've heard people say that about this band, and I think I understand what they mean. And there are critics of this album out there, I'm sure, but for me, it was an instant attraction that I felt to it. The album became a cult classic for a lot of people, and possibly a blueprint for experimental rock in the 21st century. There are probably bands out there who have kind of borrowed elements from this album. I won't name names, especially when I can't even think of any immediately right now. But you know what I mean. Every great band, every great album will have some people who draw parts from it. Maybe they'll even steal outright from it. And surely some bands out there took notes, fans became obsessed, and the Mars Volta cemented their reputation as sort of like mad scientists of modern rock. And another sign that this album is good is that it definitely encourages a little bit of reflection. I don't know why, because it is sort of like a chaotic. sound at times. It doesn't seem like you would have time to reflect while you're listening to the album, but you also get kind of lost into it a little bit. Like it is a bit of a journey. And it's not just the lyrics or anything like that. It's also just the mood that all the elements throw in together. It's something that will have you pondering just random things perhaps. And it's a trip, you know. And looking back, De-Loused in the Comatorium, it still feels a little bit dangerous, like it's an edgy album that was just throwing caution to the wind, throwing a lot of preconceptions out, and it was just one of those things where the band went into the studio and they put a bunch of different things into a blender, and I guess they hit frappe. I don't really have a blender, so I don't know all the settings, but I guess frappe is a setting on a blender. And they did the equivalent of a creative blender with this one. It's not background music, it's an experience. It's like a hallucination rendered in sound. And I suppose that makes it a little bit psychedelic as well. It's a story about a man lost between life and death, told by a band that refused to play it safe. And next time you press play on this album, don't just listen, let it pull you under. You might not come back the same. And I might even have a few follow up episode ideas inspired by this album. Maybe a sort of inside the recording process episode, a deep dive into Rick Rubin's minimalist production and Flea's contributions. Maybe I could spotlight certain tracks like CWT594 ESP, and I'm probably mispronouncing that title. But you know, it is a 12-minute odyssey that leaves room for dissection, so that could be potentially interesting. And you could look at the real story behind the character of Serpent Taxed, or I could do that, I should say. You know, the Julio Venegas story, the human story at the album's core. I think that could also be explored in a future episode. But you know what? I haven't taken those notes yet, so that might await in the future at some point. We'll see. Maybe not, but I like the idea anyway. Let me know your thoughts on this album if you like it or don't like it. You know, maybe I'll even respond to you if you leave a message on a YouTube video of this episode or something like that. You know, I'd be curious to know what people think, how this album impacted them. Is it one of those albums that changed your life, or or is it strangely defying the odds and you just found it to be a complete snooze fest or something like that? So anyway, have a good day.